The last time anyone laughed at Noah Hartley was the Sunday before the world found out they had no seeds.
You still playing with your grandma's jars, Noah? You got enough of them back there to can the whole county.
Noah didn't answer. He just held the jar a little tighter, his gray-blue eyes steady.
Bet he thinks them old seeds are worth more than our whole crop. Ain't that right, Noah?
Noah's expression didn't change. The faint sunburn across his nose deepened only slightly, but his jaw tightened. What no one in that church knew was that the jar held more than seeds. It held the only unsullied tomato genetics for 100 miles. And Noah knew, in the quiet part of himself that only the greenhouse saw, that the day would come when those seeds meant survival. The laughter faded as the preacher stood. Earl's smirk lingered a moment longer before he turned back.
Almost time, Grandma.
In 3 weeks, the Sunday laughter would stop, and not a single farmer in that county would be laughing at all. But the seeds in that jar carried a memory that began 15 years earlier, in a greenhouse much like the one Noah now tended alone.
You see, Noah, every seed is a promise. You save the best, and the land remembers.
Edna Hartley had spent 50 years collecting and crossbreeding heirloom tomatoes, refusing to let their flavors die.
Hold them lightly, like you'd hold a butterfly.
When Noah was 15, the lessons ended.
I won't let them be forgotten.
He buried his grandmother with a small packet of her favorite seeds, and he promised to carry on.
I'll keep them safe, Grandma, every single one. They mock me, but they don't know. These jars hold more than seeds. They hold her life's work.
And as the weeks passed, the mocking became a distant noise, drowned out by the quiet rhythm of saving what mattered most. In the greenhouse, Noah finished cataloging the last of the 43 heirloom varieties, each jar labeled in Edna's steady handwriting.
43, every single one accounted for.
As dusk fell, he carried a crate of empty jars to the farmhouse, where an old leather ledger sat on a shelf, waiting.
There you are, Grandma's record book.
He opened the brittle pages and found entries from the 1970s, detailing crossbreeding experiments and harvest yields. One entry, dated March 1978, read, "Caldwell Company demands I surrender breeding lines. I refused. They terminated me."
Terminated? For refusing to give up her own plants?
Noah's frown deepened, but before he could read further, the sound of a truck engine rumbled up the driveway. He closed the ledger, its weight suddenly heavier than before, and glanced toward the door. The truck stopped. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Brian Caldwell stepped out of his company SUV with a politician's smile and a clipboard, his polo shirt crisp and deliberate.
"Noah, I've heard about your grandmother's collection. I am authorized to offer you $200 for the entire lot, strictly for heritage preservation."
You think I don't know what preservation means? It means keeping them out of your company's hands.
Careful, son. A collection this old could lose viability. Better to have the cash than a greenhouse full of dead seeds.
Noah said nothing. He turned his back and walked deeper into the greenhouse, leaving Brian and his check on the gravel outside. 7 days later, every television in the county flickered with the same emergency broadcast. A fungal contamination had been traced to the dominant hybrid seed line. The USDA ordered an immediate recall of every lot in 7 states.
Recalled. Planting season starts in 2 weeks. What are we supposed to do? Plant rocks?
Outside the store, farmers stood in stunned clusters, holding empty seed bags and staring at their own fields. The seeds they'd laughed about were suddenly the only hope left in 3 counties. A week later, the church fellowship hall filled with farmers who had nowhere else to go, their faces drawn and their seed bags still empty.
I can't believe I am saying this, but that Hartley boy, he's got jars of seeds, the ones we all laughed at.
A few men scoffed, but the sound was hollow, dying quickly in the stale air.
You got a better idea? Because I haven't seen a single seed for sale in 50 miles.
The room went silent. The only sound was the scrape of a chair as a man stood up to leave, but he didn't go far. That same afternoon, Noah worked in his greenhouse, unaware of the meeting but certain it was happening somewhere.
They'll come when they're ready. The land won't wait, and neither will the seeds.
He wasn't gloating. He was simply waiting, like a farmer waits for rain, knowing it would come when it was needed. A few miles away, Earl Simmons walked out of the church hall, his hat low, and started his truck. He didn't drive home. He turned east toward the Hartley farm, his pride left behind in the empty seed bags. The truck rumbled to a stop. Earl Simmons walked toward the greenhouse with the slow step of a man carrying something heavier than his hat.
Noah, I come to ask if you might spare some of them seeds. I know I ain't earned the right.
You remember that Sunday, Earl? When you asked if I was still playing in my grandma's jars?
I remember. I was wrong. I was proud and wrong, and my fields are bare because of it.
Noah disappeared into the greenhouse and returned with a single mason jar, the seeds within glowing like amber.
This is for your family's garden. Tell the others, I'll sell seeds at fair cost, but each one has to come ask me direct. No middlemen.
I'll do it, and thank you. I won't forget this.
Earl took the jar in both hands, as if holding something holy, and walked back to his truck without looking back.
They'll come, not because they're sorry, but because they need to eat. That's fair enough.
By sunrise, the story of what happened at the Hartley greenhouse was on its way to every farm in the county. The next morning, a familiar SUV pulled up, but this time Brian Caldwell's smile was strained, his clipboard replaced by a cashier's check.
$5,000, Noah, for the whole collection. That's 10 times what your grandmother ever saw for them.
You are scared, aren't you? You know the recall won't be lifted before planting. Your out-of-state story is a lie.
I can have seeds trucked in from 3 states by the end of the week.
Then you don't need mine. So why are you still standing here?
Brian's jaw tightened. Without a word, he pulled out another check.
10,000. Half the jars. You keep the rest. This is more money than your family's seen in a decade.
Money doesn't buy what's in those jars. And you should be careful what you try to bury, Mr. Caldwell. Secrets have a way of sprouting.
Brian went pale, the check trembling in his hand. He turned without another word. As the SUV sped away, Noah knew the real fight hadn't even started. That night, Noah carried the ledger to the kitchen table and opened it to the page he'd barely glanced at before. Below the termination note, another entry read, June 1978. Caldwell Company released a hybrid tomato identical to my cross. They gave it a new name and called it their own.
She knew. She knew they stole her work, and she couldn't stop them.
He turned pages, finding more notes about breeding lines and dates that matched the company's famous releases. In a cardboard box under the bed, he found a yellowed newspaper clipping from 1978. The headline read, Local woman develops hybrid tomato. Company denies credit. There was a photo of Edna, younger but proud.
They didn't just fire her. They erased her.
The dates lined up. The hybrids that made Caldwell rich were born in this greenhouse, under these hands.
Now I have the proof.
He closed the ledger, its weight now the weight of a weapon. The fight for seeds had become a fight for justice. Noah carried the ledger to the greenhouse and sat on an old stool, the evening light spilling through the glass.
I could ask for a fortune, but Grandma never cared about money. She wanted people to eat.
He glanced at Edna's photograph on the shelf, her smile steady behind the glass.
I'll sell the seeds at cost. Every farmer who needs them gets a fair price.
But fairness for himself wasn't enough. His grandmother had been wronged, and the proof sat heavy in his lap.
They built an empire on her work, then erased her. I won't let that stand.
He pulled a sheet of paper from the desk and began to write a letter to the board of Caldwell Seeds. Your most profitable hybrids were bred by Edna Hartley. I demand public acknowledgement, and royalties unpaid for 30 years, with interest. He folded the letter carefully, then tucked it into the ledger. He wouldn't send it yet. Brian would come back.
When he does, everything changes.
Brian returned a third time, no longer smiling. The cashier's check in his hand was for $10,000 per jar.
Every jar, Noah. Exclusive deal. You'll never have to work again. Your whole family set for life.
You built your company on a lie, Mr. Caldwell. And I have the proof right here.
He turned to the page and read aloud, March 1978. Caldwell Company demands I surrender breeding lines. I refused. They terminated me. Then he laid the newspaper clipping beside it. The headline said what the company had always denied.
That's an old woman's fantasy. You can't prove anything, and if you try, I'll bury you in court.
The dates match. Your hybrids match her crosses. You stole her life's work and left her with nothing.
You are a 17-year-old playing lawyer. I'll sue you for defamation, destroy your name. Take this farm.
Noah didn't flinch. He simply closed the ledger and held it against his chest. But Brian's threats hung in the air, and for the first time, Noah saw fear behind the fury. Brian stormed out, his threats echoing, but the dust from his SUV had barely settled before the story began to spread.
I saw the ledger myself. Edna Hartley bred the hybrids that made Caldwell rich, and they fired her for it.
The barn filled that evening, not with anger, but with a raw, urgent hope.
My grandmother's work was stolen. This ledger proves it, and I am asking you to stand with me when I demand justice.
We'll stand with you. Noah, if Caldwell wants a fight, they'll get more than they bargained for.
Then, let's vote. I'll sell seeds at cost, but not until Caldwell admits the truth and pays what they owe.
One by one, the farmers raised their hands. The vote was unanimous. Word of the vote reached Brian before the night was over. The people had chosen sides. By morning, every farmer who hadn't been there knew. Noah Hartley wasn't alone anymore, and Brian Caldwell knew it too. The battle was no longer between a boy and a company. It was a community against a lie. The news of the barn vote hit Caldwell headquarters like a freeze. In the glass-walled boardroom, Brian stood before men who did not tolerate failure.
They're demanding a public apology and back royalties. They've got the proof.
The response was ice cold. Fix it, or clear your desk. Brian left the room with a single instruction. Make the problem disappear. By evening, his SUV was back on the Hartley driveway. But this time, he didn't bother with a smile.
$1.5 million, Noah. Cash now. You walk away rich, and we keep the name.
You are not buying the truth. Not for any price.
Then I'll bury you. We'll tie this up in court for 5 years and drain every acre of this farm.
The next morning, the county paper ran a statement. Caldwell Seeds accuses local youth of misappropriating proprietary documents. Noah read the headline twice. They weren't just threatening him. They were accusing him of theft.
If I fight, I could lose the farm. But if I back down, her name stays buried forever. Earl, get me on the morning radio. It's time everyone knew the truth.
I'll set it up. You just tell him what's in that book, son.
The next morning, Noah sat in a tiny radio booth, the mic an inch from his lips, the county listening.
For 50 years, my grandmother Edna Hartley bred tomatoes. Caldwell Seed took her work, fired her, and made millions.
By the time his voice crackled through dashboard speakers, trucks were pulling off the road to listen. Within hours, farmers from 3 adjacent counties were calling in, pledging solidarity. At Caldwell headquarters, the newsroom tracked the phones. The board's order was swift.
They've killed our name. Settle it. Whatever the boy wants.
An hour later, the white SUV pulled into the Hartley driveway for the last time. Brian stepped out. No check, no threats, just a nod.
Let's talk terms, Noah.
They moved inside the greenhouse, the old wood stove cold, the ledger open on the workbench between them.
We're authorized to pay top dollar. A lump sum, enough to buy this place twice over.
And your company publicly admits my grandmother bred those hybrids?
We can't do that. It opens us to every claim in history. Take the money, Noah. Name your price.
Noah shook his head once. No amount of money could buy back his grandmother's name.
Here are my terms: public acknowledgement, 30 years back royalties with interest, and seeds for every farmer at cost.
The board will never agree to a public admission. You are asking us to look guilty.
You are guilty. Call them right now, or walk away with nothing.
Brian's hand trembled as he pulled out his phone. The greenhouse fell silent except for the ringing. For the first time, Noah saw a man stripped of power. Now, it was up to the board. In the glass-walled boardroom, the phone call became a war of voices. Brian repeated Noah's demands, and the room erupted.
They'll pay the royalties. They'll sell seeds at cost. But they won't issue a public statement.
No acknowledgement, no deal. My grandmother's name is not a bargaining chip.
Then Noah reached into his pocket and pulled out a letter. He had already written to a national agricultural journal.
If I mail this, your company's theft becomes national news by Monday.
You are bluffing.
But Brian's voice cracked. The board heard the uncertainty and broke.
They've agreed. All 3 terms. Public statement, back royalties with interest, seeds at cost.
The press release would go out within 24 hours. Edna Hartley's name would finally take its rightful place. The verbal deal was struck. Tomorrow, they would put it in writing. But tonight, Noah let himself breathe. The next morning, a plain wooden table had been set in the greenhouse. A lawyer sat with a stack of documents, and Brian Caldwell stood stiffly to one side.
The agreed sum. Plus 30 years of interest, placed in a trust in your grandmother's name.
It was never about the money. She just wanted her name to mean something.
Then, Brian produced a framed letter, the apology from the CEO. Noah read it silently, his thumb tracing the glass. Caldwell Seeds formally acknowledges Edna Hartley as the original breeder of its flagship hybrids. We apologize for the decades of unrecognized work and the unjust termination of 1978. He set the frame down and, without another word, picked up the pen. The signing took less than a minute. The lawyer notarized the final page. The deal was sealed.
Tell your board, the seeds will flow now. Every farmer gets what they need, at cost. That was her real legacy.
By afternoon, the press release hit the wires. The same paper that had accused Noah now ran the headline, "Justice for Edna."
She would have just wanted the seeds planted.
The next morning, the line stretched from the greenhouse door to the county road. Men and women who had laughed now waited in patient silence.
Noah, I ain't here just for seeds. I come to say I was wrong, and I am sorry.
It's forgotten, Earl. Let's put seeds in the ground.
One by one, they came. Each received a packet of Edna's heirloom seeds, and many offered quiet apologies.
You don't owe me an apology. Just promise to save a few seeds this year. Keep the cycle going.
Some of the older farmers couldn't meet his eyes. They took their seeds with a nod and a handshake that said more than words.
She'd be proud of you, boy. Real proud.
Maybe. But this isn't about pride. It's about keeping the promise.
By midday, the jars were half empty, and the fields of 3 counties were on their way to being full. Noah stayed until the last farmer left, then sat on the greenhouse stool, the empty jars glowing in the afternoon light. 2 days later, the National Agricultural Journal ran a cover story. The seed saver who changed everything. Beside the article was a photo of Edna in her greenhouse, the same one Noah had on the shelf. The town square saw a new plaque. Edna Hartley. Her seeds fed 3 counties.
She never got to see this, but you did, Noah, and that counts for something.
It counts for her. That's all that matters.
That Sunday, the same church where he had been ridiculed was filled to the walls. The preacher spoke of humility and unseen legacies, then asked Noah to stand. A single tear traced his sunburned cheek, but he didn't wipe it away. The farmers who had mocked him began to clap, slowly at first, then a roar that filled the old wooden beams.
We did it, Grandma. They know now.
A week after the church service, Noah walked into the town historical society carrying the ledger and a cardboard box.
This book holds more than recipes. It's proof that my grandmother's work mattered, and so does every farmer whose name gets forgotten. Record what you do. Write it down. Otherwise, the companies will write it for you.
The director accepted the donation with quiet thanks, then placed the ledger under a thick pane of glass. Beside it, a small placard read simply, "She fed them anyway." They hung Edna's photograph above the case, her steady smile finally acknowledged by history.
A copy for here. The original for the world. That's what she would have wanted.
Noah left the building lighter, as if the weight of the ledger had finally transferred to where it belonged. The story of Edna Hartley was no longer just his. It was a seed planted in the community's memory.
Now we grow.
By mid-July, the county was a patchwork of green. Rows of tomato plants stretched to the fence lines, heavy with fruit. Farmers who had once mocked Noah now walked their fields with quiet pride. The promise of the seeds fulfilled. At the Hartley farm, Noah moved through his own rows with a notebook, checking the new heirloom crosses. He lifted a ripe Cherokee purple from the vine, its dusky skin warm from the sun.
These still taste like her garden. Like those afternoons when she taught me to save seeds.
He paused by the greenhouse shelf where Edna's photo stood. A new shelf of jars labeled foundation stock. Beside it, he touched the frame gently, as if seeking permission to move forward. Beyond the glass, the field stretched golden and full.
We did it, Grandma. The land is fed, and your name is alive.
And in that quiet, he finally let himself believe it was enough. A year later, the greenhouse was filled with the chatter of 4-H kids, their hands stained with tomato pulp, their eyes bright with discovery.
Don't rush. The seeds will wait for you. They've waited for years.
He moved among them, the way his grandmother had moved around him, with the same patience, the same certainty that the land remembered. Outside, an unfamiliar but familiar car pulled up. Brian Caldwell, gray-haired now, stepped out with a banker's box.
I am retired. Found these in the old files. Edna's original contract, personnel forms. They should be with the society.
Thank you.
They didn't shake hands, but the nod they exchanged was almost something close to civil. He added the contract to the Historical Society display later that week. Another piece of proof that could never be erased again.
All right, kids. Who's ready to make their first seed envelope?
And in that greenhouse, the lesson took root. That evening, Noah walked alone to the edge of the field, where the heirloom tomatoes hung heavy on the vine. He plucked a ripe Cherokee purple from the stem, its skin still warm from the long summer day. With his thumbnail, he split the fruit open, revealing the gelatin-coated seeds nestled in its heart. They were the same shape and color as the ones his grandmother had taught him to save. All those years ago, he pressed a single seed into his palm, then knelt and pressed it into the dark soil. At the edge of the row, a faint, private smile touched his lips, not of triumph, but of something closer to peace. Behind him, the greenhouse caught the last light, its glass panes burning gold. The camera drew back, the farm shrinking into a patchwork of green and gold, the field stretching toward the horizon. The seeds remembered, and because a boy remembered, so did everyone else. Fade to black,